Happy Monday. Let's start seated. That looks pretty fun to me, Lisa. It's a good, solid, anchored spot. Ah, make sure I can see everything. And so we'll just find a seat that is supportive and comfortable. Let our breath get nice and fluid. Think about how you can adjust the angle or position of your torso so that you can be more settled. And then really think about how you can craft your center for this ah, evening's practice. We'll give ourselves about 60 more seconds here just to find that centering point. With our next exhale, chin's going to come down to the sternum. And as the chin tucks down, think about squeezing the shoulder blades back just a touch so that we craft a little more space. And then keeping kind of that anchored shoulder space, that retraction, let's lift the chin, that big extension of the cervical spine. And then we'll exhale and tuck the chin once again, thinking about that shoulder expansion. One more time, let's anchor the shoulders and lift the chin. And then we'll come back to neutral. And let's transition over to hands and knees. Tabletop. And from tabletop, think about setting that base position. Splay the fingers out nice and wide. And then turn your head so that your chin can go to your left shoulder. Maybe even trying to gaze behind you here. And then relax back to neutral. And then let's do the same thing to the second side, the right shoulder. And then when you feel balance, left to right, let's come back to neutral. And now we'll curl our toes. Maybe take a moment to kind of ensure that you are neutral in the spine, and then curl our toes. And let's lift like halfway back into down dog. So it's like a roll back. Maybe the knees stay pretty darn bent. And then we'll come down to hands and knees, tabletop, flip the tops of the feet, and sink back into child's pose. And as you settle into that child's pose space, think about kind of the angle of your spine and what is most benefiting you for the angle that you choose, right? You can have the hips a little higher. You can draw those hips down a little more. And then eventually we'll pull ourselves forward to hands and knees. Tabletop. Splay those fingers out nice and wide. Curl the toes once again. This time we'll roll all the way back into down dog, thinking about pushing that weight back into the hips. And then let's walk forward into fold. Inhale, nice big half lift. Exhale all the way back into your fold. Let your head go here. Let your neck go here. Let that anterior hip crease kind of be your hinge. And then let's drift our awareness to our sacrum, and we'll roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Really just working to slowly expand ourselves to vertical. And then maybe from this space, hands coming together at heart center, giving yourself that opportunity for a little front back check-in. And let's just slide our left foot straight back into lunge. Hands staying at heart center, really thinking about that middle line, grounding our left heel and rolling open into warrior two. That broad expansiveness of warrior two. And then we'll spin the left heel up and we'll refine crescent. Drop the hands to heart center as we return to the front of our mat. Restabilize, rebalance, feel the weight distribution, and then we'll slide that right foot back again, just landing and thinking about our positioning here, and then grounding that right heel and rolling open to a warrior two. The width of the shape, kind of our focus. And from that, let's spin that right heel back up and we'll come back into crescent. Hands drop to heart center as we return to the front of our mat. Sweep our arms up and overhead. And then we'll exhale through forward fold. Getting all the way into our fold space, letting your head go. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Plant your hands, walk back into down dog. Transition the weight back into the hips. Craft that distance. And let's come back to hands and knees tabletop. We'll flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose again. And as we work our way back into that child's pose shape, thinking about the position or the angle of our spine, relaxing with the exhale breath into areas that feel restrictive. And let's just give ourselves about 15 more seconds here. Just a little check-in. And we'll pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. Reestablish the neutral alignment. Think about how we can be more neutral. Curl our toes, lift our seat, roll back into down dog. And let's walk our way forward to fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Drift your awareness to your sacrum. We'll roll ourselves up once again. Bringing ourselves into this top space. Bringing our hands together at heart center. Thinking about that good kind of bilateral balance. And then let's pull our left knee up into a little half Karate Kid. So hands can stay at heart center if that feels comfortable. If you like to play, feel free to do that as well. And then with that idea of stability, let's slide our left foot straight back. And we'll land again in crescent. So hands coming back to heart center. And then we're going to shift back into the right hamstring. So left leg extends back, right hamstring straightens. And we just have this pyramid leg alignment. And then we'll rebend the front knee and slide the left foot to the front of the mat to re-find that equilibrium of stability left-right. And then right knee is going to come up into this little half Karate Kid. We keep that kind of capacity for movement. Optionality of the hand placement. And then we'll slide the right foot straight back. As we land and as we stabilize, we'll bring the hands to heart center and then just slide back into that left hamstring so that we can craft ourselves a little bit of kind of forward back stability on the toe mounds. Really think about that front toe mound and then keep that as you bend that left knee, and we'll slide the right foot forward. Hands staying at heart center and thinking about the glutes guiding the shape. Drive the seat back into chair. So we keep that big knee bend, or we create that big knee bend. We keep that big neutral awareness of our spine. And then let's push ourselves forward into fold and let the hamstring really receive the request for space there. Inhale into half lift. And then exhale back into fold. See if you can stay with that kind of hamstring ask. And then let's plant our hands and we'll walk to plank. And from plank, we'll slowly lower ourselves down to our belly. From this belly space, let's keep our hands right where they are. So right underneath that shoulder structure, but make sure your fingers are all the way out, active and engaged. And then quads are flexed, kneecaps are lifted. Keep the focus or the vision field straight down and lift your head maybe a half inch off of the mat. And then flex into the quads just a little bit more. See if you can drive some length into the spinal column. And then we'll relax. Slide our hands underneath our forehead. And breathe into this space. So there's this little village with this village elder who's a yogi. And everyone just has always brought their problems to the yogi. And she's always had the best advice, and that's why people keep bringing her their problems. On this particular day, A young woman has shown up with a not too uncommon problem. She's feeling overwhelmed. She's feeling disconnected. She's feeling anxious, discombobulated. We'll give ourselves just 15 more seconds here. When it feels appropriate, sliding the hands underneath our shoulders, we'll press ourselves up to hands and knees. Tabletop. From hands and knees, tabletop. Let's curl the toes, lift the seat, find our way back into down dog. Drive that length and that space. And then we'll walk ourselves forward into forward fold. Inhale our way into half lift and exhale our way back into fold. Drift your awareness to your sacrum and let's sweep ourselves all the way up, letting the hands settle at heart center. And then let's just lift the left leg, little half Karate Kid, and we'll slide that left leg back and into lunge. Ground your left heel, keeping the hands at heart center. So we're staying with kind of this awareness of the middle of the body. We're just going to we're going to drift our torso towards our right thigh. So if we can lay down on that, wonderful. If not, you can use that elbow as kind of a prop, right? So maybe we get into a little bit more parallel thinking with our thigh, or maybe we have the elbow as a little bit of a prop to help maintain that stability. It feels what feels right. And then let's draw back up. And as we come back up, we're going to slide back into that right knee. So we straighten the hamstring and then blossom out into this kind of combo shape. Now, you can see my body is like really tilted forward, right? Think about lifting the torso back up so that we find that vertical alignment. And then imagine that you're gonna go into triangle, but we're not. We're gonna go maybe like 15% of the way into triangle. So we just get that little tilt just so that you can feel the hamstring activate. And then we're gonna bend the front knee, draw ourselves back up into warrior two, spin the left heel up and find crescent. And then we'll draw that left foot forward and find mountain. This settling, relaxing, and grounding capacity here in our mountain. Thinking about the shoulders relaxing, the breath relaxing, and then we'll flip over to our awareness on side two. So right knee comes up to that half Karate Kid space. Right foot slides back. Right heel grounds. We roll the torso. Hands staying at heart center. We're staying with that midline awareness. And then from that awareness in the middle of the body, we're just going to take ourselves either onto that front thigh or onto that front elbow, whatever feels best for you. Or if something else feels better, right? The choice that's right for you. And then we'll draw our torso up. As we do so, we straighten into the front leg. Extend the arms out nice and wide. Think about getting the torso vertical here. So we come all the way up. We take that little tilt out. We come all the way up. And then 15% of the way into triangle. Just enough so that you catch the attention of the hamstring. And then we'll bend the front knee and find warrior two. We should have a pretty good amount of room of space for this warrior two as well. Right heel spins up, crescent. Hands drop to heart center. Right foot returns to the front of the mat. Settle in, find that balance, and then our goal is going to be to kind of feel what we've done for or to the hamstring. So sweeping the arms up. Let's exhale through fold. See if you can feel the hamstrings either grant you more space, right? Create more room, or start speaking to you louder, or just letting them know that they were letting you know they were involved in that last little sequence. And then we'll drift our awareness to our sacrum once again. And let's sweep ourselves up back into mountain. Finding that mountain, finding that stability, thinking about front, anterior, posterior neutrality. Right foot's going to slide halfway back onto our mat. Seems like that should be a thing that we can do, or I can do. We want the right heel to be grounded. So the step back here is kind of dictated by where we can still ground the foot. And that's kind of what we're making our determination on. And then we're going to straighten into the front leg. So we pull towards a more straightened left hamstring. Hands are going to come onto our thighs, and we'll broaden out across the collarbone here. And then let's tilt our torso. We're going to go towards parallel to the floor. Doesn't mean we'll get to parallel, but we're going to go towards parallel to the floor. And then pull ourselves up. And now we're going to bring our hands up to shoulder height. So not necessarily touching the shoulders, right? Kind of depends on what the shoulder capacity is. But at shoulder height, yeah, that's a pretty good way to show that. And we're going to take that same little parallel-ish fold. And then we'll draw ourselves up. And we're going to bring the hands together, interlace the fingers, and then extend the arms overhead. And here we want the biceps to be pretty close to the ears. So really think about that positioning. And then we're headed again towards that parallel spacing. And then release all the way through fold and slide your right foot forward to mirror the left. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Settle here. Feel that little bit of imbalance, right? That little bit of off-centeredness in our openness. And then drift your awareness to your sacrum. And we're going to sweep ourselves up. Hands come together at heart center. Left foot this time is going to slide back, and it is going to slide back to the distance where we can ground our back heel. We just want to ensure both feet kind of running on those parallel tracks forward. Sliding back into that right hamstring. Hands coming down to our hips. And then we'll tilt our way towards parallel. Doesn't mean we go parallel, but we're towards parallel. And then we'll lift ourselves back up. Hands come to that shoulder-ish level. And we'll take ourselves forward into the fold. And then draw ourselves up. Hands come together at heart center. We extend the arms overhead, create that engagement towards the ears, and then we'll extend and release ourselves through fold, sliding our left foot forward to mirror the right, inhaling into half lift, exhaling back into fold, and really feeling into the work that we've offered the hamstrings. Let's plant our hands. We'll walk ourselves back into down dog. So we get this like really nice opportunity to feel down dog. Push back into the heels. Really try to anchor your energy into the heels here so you can maximize the space in the hamstrings. And then let's come down to hands and knees tabletop. We'll flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. Settling here, breathing here. Landing here maybe is the most important piece. Breathing's the most important. But after breathing, landing. And so, as this kind of elder yogi always does, she offers great advice. She tells this young woman who's feeling so disjointed, she needs to go into town, she needs to go into Mumbai, and she needs to find this ancient bench. This bench that's like 10,000 plus years old. She needs to sit herself down on that bench, and she needs to not leave that bench until the solution is presented to her. And so, kind of with a little bit of excitement, right? This woman always offers great advice. This young woman heads into town and starts to look for this bench. Let's bring our hands in front of us if they're not still there. We'll pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, we'll curl our toes, lift our seat, find our way back into down dog. Push from those finger mounds to our hips. And then let's walk our way forward into fold. From fold, inhale into half lift. Exhale back into your fold space. Shift your awareness to your sacrum, and we're going to roll up this time. So we've been sweeping. We're going to slow this down. Really feel that posterior chain musculature as you are unfolding here. Think about how things are operating until we get into our vertical mountain. And then let's slide our left leg straight back. Left leg lands, left heel grounds, arms, cactus. Think about big, flat, neutral front body. And then slide back into that right hamstring. So we're headed towards a triangle. That being said, triangle with cactus is a little bit harder than triangle with arms extended. So we're going to go towards what our body is feeling happy with. And because we have the arms in this 90-degree bend at the elbow, it just puts the weight in a different place, right? We're not supporting. We're thinking about that big lateral expansion on the top side. We'll draw ourselves back up, blossom out into warrior two. And then we're going to make a big kind of double piece transition. So from warrior two, we're going to, in one piece, bring our hands to heart center, spin towards a crescent or lunge alignment, and draw the left leg forward. So it's going to be like and into a little half kid. And it's a big balancing ask. And then we're going to slide the left leg back once again as the toe mounds land, reach straight up into crescent, and then lift your chin and push back into that left heel. Really think about fully expressing the crescent-y version of the shape, as well as the energy into the heel. And then let's bring our hands together at heart center, and we'll step forward. Back into this little asymmetrical mountain. Asymmetry here, interestingly enough, it like can feel like it's hips, but it's really that glute hamstring interchange. So think about kind of engaging the glutes to get the hip bowl to feel settled. And then let's take this over to side two. So hands at heart center, finding our half Karate Kid. We'll slide the right foot back. Turning and landing the back heel. Taking the arms out towards cactus. Thinking about the elbow shoulder positioning, sliding back into our left hamstring. We'll tilt forward towards this modified triangle. Remember, only going as far forward as feels beneficial. Thinking about that top side expansiveness. Coming back up and blossoming into our warrior two. Thinking about the amount of stability required here. And then from that, hands are coming to heart center. We're bringing that back leg forward and finding our little balance. Nice. Heck yes. Nice job, Skip. And then let's slide the right foot back into lunge, land and ground and push into that heel. Sweep the arms, lift the chin, drive your energy back into that back leg. When you feel balanced, we will drop the hands to heart center, step the right foot forward, sweep the arms up and overhead, and exhale through forward fold. Thinking about that glute hamstring interchange and how this forward fold is received in that big musculature connection. And then let's plant our hands. We'll walk ourselves to down dog because we have to feel that. Push back into those heels. Shift our weight forward to plank, and we'll slowly lower ourselves to our belly. Hands staying right where they are, quads flex, kneecaps lift. Squeeze your elbows in towards your rib cage a little bit more this time. And then let's get a little bit more lift to the forehead. So maybe like an inch, inch and a half. And then pull your scapula down towards your glutes. And that kind of scapula elbow connection there is going to become apparent. As the scapula are pulling down, note where you feel in your elbows. And then maybe even start to think about the elbows pushing back as well. And then we'll relax, slide our hands underneath our forehead. And breathe into a little crocodile pose. Nice work. And so this young woman kind of follows the guidance she was given on how to find this bench. She gets down into Mumbai and she's walking through the streets. And she knows roughly where she's going, but she's surprised because every like turn that she needs to make to get to this bench puts her on an even busier, even louder street. And she kind of expected that this bench was going to be, in the middle of some quiet park. That it was going to have this like tranquil, serene setting. But when she finally finds the bench, it couldn't be further from her expectation. It is on this incredibly busy street, on this incredibly busy intersection. And the only thing she can hear over the constant honking car horns are people shouting. Last 15 seconds here. When it feels appropriate, let's pull ourselves forward to lift ourselves up to hands and knees tabletop. So sliding the hands underneath us, pressing yourselves up. And then from tabletop, feeling those fingers grip into the mat, curling your toes. And like we started class with, we're only going to go halfway back into down dog. So think about huge knee bend, halfway back, and then push the weight back into the hips, staying with that huge, significant knee bend here. Drive the energy from the finger mounds back to the hips, and then push back through the hamstrings and fully express your down dog space in probably the hardest way to get into down dog possible. And then we'll walk ourselves forward into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Sweep yourself up. Bring your hands together at heart center. Think about the anterior hip crease, and we're going to sink the seat back into chair. And then bring your torso all the way down to your thighs. And then sink your seat to your heels. And we will extend our legs out in front of us and follow that leg extension into a little forward fold. Forward fold where we should have a pretty good amount of room, right? In comparison to our normal, I don't know if normal is the right word. In comparison to a typical first seated forward fold, we should have quite a bit of space here. And we're going to give ourselves about 30 seconds in this shape, just enough time to kind of slow our respiration and settle. And when it feels appropriate, we'll walk ourselves up to a nice vertical seat. And then let's lower ourselves onto our spine. And we get this opportunity to appreciate what we've done. Last 15-ish seconds here. And then let's bring our knees into a bent position. And let's play a little bit with our hips here. We're going to take our feet out to the width of the mat, let the knees fall in towards one another, trying to kind of deactivate that trunk space. So lumbar, abdominal musculature kind of turned off. The hip musculature can be as turned off as you can be supportive. So if you don't feel like the knees are coming together where they can rest on one another, walk the feet just a little closer in so that the hip musculature has the opportunity to turn off as well. We'll give ourselves about 30 more seconds here. And then we'll bring our knees out to the width of our ankles and then walk our ankles and our knees in line with our hips. And let's take our left ankle across our right thigh for some figure 4-y setup. And then continuing that kind of play with our hips and all the hamstring space that we've opened up, left hand's going to come onto that inner edge. We're pushing the left thigh away. And as you do that, the femur rolls, right? We get that additional external rotation. But we are going to get all the way into as much energy as feels good from our left hand to our left thigh. And then we're going to flex into the glutes and maybe even the quad of the left leg. Glute engagement can be bilateral, but try to leave the quad on the right leg deactivated and see if you can get the quad on the left leg to activate. And then relax and extend your right leg down the mat, keeping that left ankle roughly on top of the right thigh, and see if the left hip will just kind of fall open into some extra external rotation. And then we'll retract that right knee. Left leg comes with it, and then the left foot's going to come down and mirror the right. And now we have some nice asymmetry. And then we're going to head right over to side 2. So right ankle comes onto the left thigh, right hand comes onto the right thigh, and we press that away. Once you get all the energy that feels good from the hand into the right thigh. Then we're going to think about that glute activation. And then from the glute activation, maybe wrapping up into that right quad activation. And so we're working kind of the big musculature groups around the femur here. And then obviously with the right hand, we're leveraging that femur away from us, trying to craft some extracurricular rotation into the hip and into the supportive musculature around that external rotation. When you feel like you've had enough, when you're balanced left to right, we'll extend the left leg down the mat. Right ankle stays roughly on top of the quad. And see if you can just relax so that that right knee just falls open, or at least opens into what is available. And then let's retract that left knee. Let the right foot fall to mirror the left and start some lateral sway. Moving here. As you start to move, you really feel, right, how much we played with the hips. Maybe when it feels appropriate, let's let the knees fall to one side or the other, and we'll just find a little static twist for a moment. And so as this young woman sits down and she's just hearing this constant stream of car horns, and then each of the corners of the intersection has a different newsstand. And so there are like newspaper barkers shouting out the headlines trying to sell their paper. And of course, they have to be even louder than the car horns. And then people are trying to hold conversations as they're walking by. And of course, they have to be louder than everything else. So it's everyone's just shouting. And it's this constant stream of noise and distraction and chaos. And she sits on this bench and she's thinking about why she was sent here. When it feels appropriate, let's bring our knees back to neutral. And then we'll exhale the knees over to the second side. And she's thinking about why she was sent here, and she's trying to think about her problems and the chaos that's been in her mind and the anxiety that's been in her mind. And each hour that passes, she's getting more and more frustrated because she can't seem to hold a single thought. And every time she tries to dive in, there's a car horn distracting her, or a newspaper headline being shouted at her, or someone screaming, trying to hold a conversation. When you feel balance left to right, we'll bring our knees back to neutral and ask ourselves if there's anything that we would benefit from before Shavasana. And if there is, let's offer that. And if we're ready for some stillness, let's just settle right into that. And so after more hours than she wanted to be there, she gives up. She starts packing up her stuff and she's about to leave the bench when standing right in front of her is that old yogi who sent her there in the first place. And so she looks up and she sees this yogi who sent her here. And the yogi looks down at her and says, what have you learned so far? And she's really embarrassed. But she answers honestly. She says, Miss, I haven't learned anything. I've been here. I've been trying to think about my problems. I have been distracted constantly by the honking of the horn, the screaming of the people, the shouting of the news headlines. And I feel like I have learned not a single thing in the entirety of this day. And the yogi looks down at her and says, well, good. Then you got the message. Start to bring some movement into our fingers and our toes, into our wrists and our ankles, elbows and knees. Shoulders, hips, neck, head, jaw, eyes, tongue. Eventually, the entirety of our body will move, and we'll utilize that mobilization to bring ourselves back into a seat, finding our way into a vertical spine, fluid breath, letting our eyes close, letting the spine hold, support the skull in a way where it can feel weightless. And then with our next inhale, we'll bring our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself, just because it's possible to be inside of a constant stream of chaos, of noise, of news, doesn't mean it's the best place to do your biggest thinking. And see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Monday. Appreciate the heck out of you for being here. Have a beautiful rest of your week, and I will be back on Sunday to recharge. Love you. Mwah.